Okay, good evening, esteemed guests and participants from across the globe. It's a pleasure to welcome you all in this impactful international webinar organized by South Asia Research Institute for Minorities. I am Zehra, serving as your host and holding the position of Senior Research Associate at South Asia Research Institute for Minorities. Our purpose today is to delve into the profound theme represented in From Declaration to Action, celebrating 75 years of struggle and addressing persistent human rights challenges. As we get ready to start the webinar, a quick note. If the Zoom meeting happens to end, please rejoin the using the same link. We are currently dealing with some membership issue with Zoom, so hope to resolve it soon. Thank you for your patience. As you all know, organization deeply committed to advance minority rights in South Asia, fostering dialogues, meaningful dialogues, and maintaining equal right regardless of religion or culture. SARIM acknowledges that paramount significance of this discourse. We are privileged to host the amazing speakers who contribute their international expertise to enhance our conversation. In today's roster, we have Professor Cássius Chai representing Brazil, Dr. Obed Manwatkar, a professor from USA, Professor Alexandre de Castro Coura from Brazil, and Sulochana Ramiah Mohan representing Sri Lanka. We are honored to have these amazing speakers with us, each bringing a wealth of knowledge and experiences in the field of human rights. From Brazil to United States and from Sri Lanka to Pakistan, our speakers embody the global nature to our collective dedication of addressing ongoing challenges in the realm of human rights. Without further ado, let's begin with the insight from Professor Cássius Chai, who holds the position of full law and geopolitical professor, School of Law, Federal University of Maranhão, Brazil. Please, Professor, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very honored and humbly I have this opportunity to share some ideas with my colleagues from other countries, especially from Pakistan, for which I'd like to thank you very much to our president of the session, senior researcher Zehra. And in her name, I'd like to thank all the board directors and members of the SARIM. Is that how I pronounce it? I'd like also to say my greetings to Professor Obed Manwatkar and Sulochana Ramiah Mohan. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing correctly. And also to thank to my colleague Furchan Ahmed. I'd like to ask if I can share my PowerPoint perfectly. So in the brief time that each of us are granted, I'd like to approach this very idea of the celebration of the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So persistent human rights challenge. I will directly cut object. So I selected and I pointed out the 10 most challengeable, persistent violences currently in the world. And I mean that from the very perspective, Brazilian one. But of course, violence is from the multidimensional perspective. The violence itself, it's spreading all over the world, either in Brazil, either in the United States of America, the sad cradle of democracy, or in France, where liberté, fraternité, égalité, these principles are core principles that somehow has helped humankind to develop the very idea of a modern state. So poverty, discrimination, human trafficking, torture, censorship, unfair trials, forced displacement, violence against women, child labor, detention abuses. I would pick up at least 3 of them that are very concerned matters for us in our Brazilian society. Violence against women. Unfortunately, If we access every day the newspapers in Brazil, we're gonna find ever different news, but day to day of violence practiced against women, either because a restriction of her own liberty, of her own visions of the world, or as labor violence, or as obstetrician violence in the caring maternity. Our rates on detention abuses, unfortunately, are very high as well. We are crowdedly struggled in our prison system in Brazil. But despite all of these aspects, we should ask ourselves, as we should ask us, Brazilians, what is the meaning of democracy? In the state I live in, Brazil, you know, but I can remind myself as well, we are comprised by 26 states, 220 million people. In the state I live in, where I'm speaking from, we have a population of almost 7 million people. Having said that, our state is unfortunately on the top ranked of forced labor, meaning the modern enslavement labor relationship. Yet, we are right now as in the position of the ninth greatest economy in the world. So what is the meaning of being one of the richest countries in the world, having a constitution establishing fundamental rights, underlying our freedom of expression, our liberties, but in the end of the day, we have to face that 1% of our population concentrates most of the richness in Brazil. So we have this disparity rating. There's one element which is very common for each of these violences, and this element is the inequality. So we have to push our civil society. We have to constrain our governments, and I mean our Brazilian government, to overturn this historical rate of inequality. So to give you, in some minutes that I still have to share with you, these numbers, I took it very recently. Africa, population 1.45 billion people, poverty in extreme poverty, the rate of population 257 million people. Over 25 million people are suffering displacement and conflict, strengthening contexts. And restrictions on civil liberties, crackdowns on dissent, journalist activities regularly face threats in many countries. And I can say that we are not in Africa, but unfortunately, in Brazil, we get worldly one of the highest rates of murdering of defenders of civil liberties in the world. So if I take the numbers for Latin American, we are almost or a little bit more than 658 million people. Brazil, our population is 220, and our poverty rate it's over 25 million people that cannot have, at least when they have, a meal a day. Yet, we live in a democratic society. So we have still to ask to ourselves, what is the meaning of democracy for each of us? I have learned, and I thank for that Professor Obed, his research area is very, very important because it's about freedom of religion, visibility, but overall dignity of the human. It doesn't matter which my religion should I take? But I have to tell you that Brazil, 220 million people, more than half of our society is comprised by African descendants. Yet, we are a democratic country, but racism knocks our door every day. And right now, we are having to face an increasing rate of religious racism. So that's a kind of violence that cannot be ignored. So if I go further, high murder rates impact rights in Mexico, Central America, but in Brazil as well. Actually, unfortunately, for the last 6 years, we can check the official reports, and I'm telling about official reports. I still insist in this number, 220 million Brazilian men and women and children and elderly people population. But only in 1916, more than 60,000 citizens were violently murdered in Brazil. In this rate, I'm not approaching all the kinds of death. So far, 2023, more than 3,500 citizens in Brazil were killed violently. So if we compare these numbers with numbers in areas where the war is running right now, those numbers should at least take us from the comfort of the mindset whiteness idea that we should investigate it deeper. So I also would like to share with you in this 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration that we have achieved much, and we have somehow improved our civilizational process in our history. Yet, we have challenges to face, and we cannot ignore them just because it's said that Brazil is on the ranking of the 9th economy in the world. Violence against indigenous groups, racial inequalities, prison violence, policy brutality, political instability, discrimination against women, LGBTQ+, poverty inequality. As I have said, Brazil is known for its high income concentration, where the richest 1% of our population holds 28.3% of total income, make it one of the most unequal countries in the world. And if we see the general picture, 10% of our population hold over 50% of the national wealth. Deforestation threats, impunity for past abuses, restrictions on civil society. I took, for example, to compare another country in a different continent, Nigeria. But why, Shai, you have chosen Nigeria? Because we have similar population rates. We have, regionally speaking, almost the same position in the structure of those different continents, South America and Africa. Because Nigeria is a very rich country, has a very potent psychosocial feature, meaning the Nigerians themselves, they are very strong people. Yet, Boko Haram insurgents, farmer-herder conflict, poverty and inequality, abuses by security force, violence against women. So we have many aspects very similar of day-by-day violence suffering. Brazil, Nigeria, India, China, Pakistan. United States, because the poverty rates of United States are not disclosed. Yet, we see on broadcast news the increasing of street shelfless population. This does not proud us because all of us are human. But we have to face these inequalities, corruption, restrictions. But I could say also from the South Asia, where you are sharing this very rich moment with us. Blasphemy accusations, forced conversions, violence against women. And again, violence against women is the top rank of those kinds of violences. Discrimination, judicial weaknesses, corruption, all of these are very concerned to us. So now, driving to my conclusions, I'd like to share you these two. I'm sure you have known it, which is the rule of law index in the world. So I pick it up Brazil. So what is our position in the rank of comprising the commitment with the very idea of respecting and living the rule of law and observing fundamental rights perspective? Our position out of 142 countries, we are at 83 position. But this is not actually the final position for Brazil, because if we cut this object of investigation, if we concentrate on constraints on government powers, our position is 7-8. But if we try to see the respect for fundamental rights overly for majority of population, we are ranked in 19th first position. If we go further, our criminal justice is almost in the last rank position of this classification. We are to face many, many problems. For one hand, 9th economy in the world. For the other hands, which is many hands themselves, we are 114th position when we talk about criminal justice. If I take the data instrument that collects the very element how women in the world can access justice, meaning their countries, their governments respect themselves under and by constitutional provisions regarding her dignity, the dignity of women. So in South America, only 2 countries can say about themselves, we can somehow respect women's rights. Unfortunately, in Brazil, we have too much to do. We have done. After 2006, entered into force a federal institute regarding the protections of women against domestic violence. Yet, every 3 minutes in our country, a woman is unfortunately violated on her rights. Now, I took and concluding from Professor George Katogralos, former External Affairs Minister from Greece, a very fond friend of ours, and I quote his words. What's going on in Western countries? What's going on in the world? Because the idea of Universal Declaration of Human Rights was granted to all of us after the Second World War as fulfilling the promises of the modern age, the Enlightenment, to free all of us from the irrationality. But we've been through an unprecedented crisis of trust in our countries, in our societies. I can show you, and you can see here, in Brazil, we have 51% of our population distrusting our government. I mean, this was back 2022, the former government cabinet. So I think that right now, these rates, the trends is to get higher, yet those Brazilian historical problems will not be vanished in a glimpse of eye. So if you can see here, South Africa, German, the D7 is a member of the D7. So Spain, UK, US, you can see the decline of trust of their population in their government. But we have to take those numbers concluding, why is this happening? Capitalism has fulfilled his promises to those societies. So you can see here on the right corner, right table, we have moral decline, unemployment, terrorism, immigration, and we have not access to healthcare system evenly. So what is the tracking sentiment of those populations? My Brazilian society is the wrong track. So this is not a problem of the global south only. It's not a problem of those countries who unfortunately historically have suffered invasions, colonialism. But to conclude, we have in this 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration to check and balance the positive aspects, the formal aspect to have the right recognized under the design of the rule of law. Yet we have to understand that we cannot live only by promises. We have to push forward our societies, our friends, our families, our government, our institutions, because we have to fight, in the end of the day, what is the most dangerous element in all this society architecture, which is the inequality. Thank you very much for this very, very great opportunity. Once again, I'm very sorry that I mistook the local time and I let you waiting for me. Thank you very much for your kind and your generous invitation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. A very wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. You deserve our gratitude for sharing the wealth of knowledge. Thank you, Professor Cássius Chai, for your invaluable insights. Next on our agenda is Dr. Obed Manwatkar, a distinguished professor specializing in world religions and cultures at North Park University in Chicago, USA. Dr. Manwatkar, the floor is all yours now.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will jump into without any wasting any time. I'm just jump into, and thank you so much, SARIM family, to give me another opportunity. Okay, so I call SARIM family always because SARIM. I'm very grateful for SARIM for giving me this opportunity. Always, no, you guys are very kind and you guys listen to me. Sometimes people will say like, okay, why you call this speaker back and forth? I don't know. So I'm not an expert of anything. I don't declare myself an expert or something, but things regarding today's topic was very, very, has been a very, very, I was thinking about it when I got this invitation and what to share on this platform because young researchers need to know. So, as far as our brother from Brazil, he spoke very well on the issues which Brazil is facing, and so 75 years of struggle and persistent human rights challenges. So first of all, I give greetings to everyone all over the globe. Today is the death anniversary of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, the one who drafted the Constitution of India and gave us our human rights. And so I salute him. And of course, he has been a global icon right now. So today, millions of oppressed are celebrating his anniversary, and there are a lot of events happening. So salute to him, and I, and in his honor, I would like to share something, few of my slides, and there you go. So 75 years of human rights. If you want to trace the history, there human rights. We have achieved a lot of milestones, and as per the concept notes, which it was required about the webinar, so I'm just sharing. So these are few milestones we have achieved in the last 75 years. In 1947, we got decolonized. Indian subcontinent got decolonized, which resulted in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and other different nations. So I'm grateful for India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and all these countries, like, because decolonization happens, so then there require there gives a room to for independence. In 1948, of course, we talked about UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, was adopted by United Nations. 1950, again, Constitution of India was enacted, and then I think in Pakistan also, in those areas, the Constitution was enacted. Of course, Bangladesh, if you have become in South Asian countries, we became independent countries. Of course, they became they got their own constitutions. So, and then segregation bill in 1954 in United States, segregation became illegal in school. And then 1960, it's celebrated the Year of Africa. So 17 states gained the right of self-determination in Africa, South Africa, in Africa. In 1960, we saw first ever female prime minister, Sirimama Bandaranaike in Sri Lanka, head of the government in those. So we South Asians can boast upon that we gave the first ever female leader in last 75 years. So that's what the milestone the South Asia has achieved. In 1964, Civil Rights Act of 1964 ended lawful segregation in the United States. Then voting rights were in Act of 1965 outlawed voter discrimination on basis of race. 1969, the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination was drafted. In 1970, first ever LGBTQ parade were witnessed in the United States. In 1972, Sweden became the first country to allow transgender individuals to legally change their gender. In 1973, American women gained the right to abortion. And so 1973, American women gained the right to freedom for abortion, right to abortion. I think during the drafting of Hindu Code Bill in India, Dr. Ambedkar proposed for freedom of women. He had a lot of plans in that, but that was not approved. But few of the things were incorporated later of that bill by the later governments. So that was again the victory. So in 1970s, there are a lot of changes happened in all over the world. The Refugee Act of 1980 regulated U.S. asylum policy for refugees. U.S. started welcoming the refugees all over the world. 1994, yes, under the leadership of the great Nelson Mandela, the Madiba, we call him. So apartheid ended in South Africa. 1998, United Nations adopted the International Criminal Court Statute. 2007, members of UN signed the Declaration on Rights of Indigenous People. In 2007 itself, members of UN signed the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. In 2018, the ban was lifted on women on driving in South Africa. So women got driver's license in 2018. They started getting driving license in Saudi Arabia. So these are a few of the milestones we have achieved. So I know things are very complex right now all over the world. We see Brazil, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and US, Canada. Few of the challenges which I am sharing on my screen. The challenges of protection of human rights is whatever we say about tomorrow, the person faced with torture, arbitrary or summary execution, being made to disappear involuntarily, or the women who are subject to violence need a protection today. The challenge of human rights protection is immediate and pressing. Secondly, the best form to protect the human right is to prevent the gross violations of human right. We need to have there is a desperate need to have preventive strategies nationally, regionally, and internationally. This question belongs to everyone, whoever are the listeners. I have this question to everyone who's listening, including myself. What has been our contribution? What have we done to the challenge of prevention? Have we done anything in this area? Today, millions of people suffer from deprivation, indignity, and wastage because of endemic poverty. So the poverty is the major issue today. Causes of this are manifold, domestic and international. Quality of governance in many instances is a root cause. Performance of the international economic system is another root cause. Differences in ethnicity, beliefs, and value system might be contributory factors in some situation. The human rights approach to poverty reduction is based on simple belief that if a society pursues democratic governance under the rule of law, and the society strives to live by the precepts of the Universal Declaration, people will have better life chances and would be able to come out of the spiral of poverty. But what practical insights we have to reduce the or what strategies we have to reduce poverty, that's a biggest challenge for us. Of course, promoting and protecting rights of children, that is one of the challenge, because if you are born in a poor in a born poor in development, whether you are from urban areas, rural areas, education is the only means you can get you can have the opportunity to get out of that fate which is assigned you at birth. Especially caste-based discrimination, racial-based discrimination happens. So people are being kept poor and deprived from education, and education empowers you to get out of the poverty. And so therefore, this is the question in front of us: how far we have achieved in this area regarding education for underprivileged children. Challenges of justice and empowerment. My brother from Brazil, he was also saying about women. Of course, justice and empowerment of women is the biggest challenge today for human rights. Everywhere, our women are facing tremendous violence. Women are facing everywhere. The injustices perpetrated against women in many parts of the world are shocking to human conscience. Strategic analysts of the way forward to the world tell us that unless we empower and render justice to women, we stand little chance of making a dent on the problem of conflicts. Nelson Mandela most precisely said that whenever we attack a woman, or if we abuse a woman, we reduce our humanity. So this is the biggest challenge for our humanity. Challenges for democracy, of course, everywhere the conservative powers have been taken. Most of the places there, the conservatism has taken hold of. So challenges of national protection system in each country. There needs to be a system, and if there needs to be new strategies to be made into the new threats are emerging. Terrorism with biotechnology, technology has been used. We can see in the world of AI, deep fake images have been circulated. So that is another challenge for us. How we combat that? Ethnic, racial, of course, inequality, ethnic, racial, gender, social, and other are widespread in the world, and this has taken a unique form. So the discrimination has taken a unique form. So that is another challenge. And of course, lastly, neocolonialism, that's the biggest challenge. Neocolonialism, groups and tricks. So those who were oppressor at one time, many of the parts, they have become oppressive to others. So that is kind of neocolonialism, which we are saying. Decolonized countries are also facing that. So colonialism is gone, but new ways of colonialism has been taken shape. So richer become richer, poor are becoming more poor, and oppression in a new form continues. Cultural diversity, I'm talking about, if I talk about diversity, equality and inclusion, that is one of the redemptive analogy human rights discourse have come up with. But today there is a need for diversity within diversity, equity within equality and inequality, and inclusion within inclusion. Why I'm saying this? Because the perception is that, especially in the West where I live, people think that like India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, like when we immigrants meet, so many people think that we belong to same color, so that's why we are brothers and sisters. So that is not. We have our own prejudices, we have our own differences. So that is like lacking into the, especially when we talk about color dynamics. But there are some elements like caste, which needs to be countered and challenged. Of course, in other words, like we have to extensively broaden the concept of cultural diversity, which runs the risk of coalescence, if not substitution, of the value of diversity with justiciable rights and principles of human rights law, such as equality and non-discrimination. In this way, the promotion of cultural diversity loses its effectiveness and it's reduced to solemn, yet empty words. So, diversity within diversity, equity within equality, equalitarian inequality. There is, in the name of equality, inequality has been practiced. There is, in the name of inclusion, there is a secret exclusion which we don't see. So those things need to be discovered by the human rights activists. This is really a challenging for all of us. So to conclude, I say that when I have been quoting Madiba, so I will again quote Madiba today because she's also today is the death anniversary as well. So salute to him. So he also passed away on this day. So to conclude, he says sometimes it falls upon a generation to be great. You can be that great generation. Let your greatness blossom. And so I'm less helpful from my generation. I'm less helpful from the second generation after me. But I'm hopeful from the third generation after me. As I see today, two generations have been successfully manipulated to believe the lies and fall in the trap of the propaganda produced by the conservative forces who are in power. And these elements have normalized to live by hate and biases as a form of cultural practices. So this has been observed in most of the parts of the world. So I hope human rights activists can take a stance on it and renew the methodologies. So all old school methodologies in 75 years, what we have gained so far, those need to be, there needs to be something called transition, which needs to happen. And we have to, we have to come up with something new. So that is the biggest challenge. So I hope our generation and second generation after me can come up with something to produce something new for the next generation. That can be. So yeah, that's how I end my speech, or what you say, I'm a talk. And so I'll over to you. And once again, thank you so much, SARIM family, for giving me an opportunity.
Thank you. We extend applause to Dr. Obed Manwatkar for delivering such impressive and insightful remarks. Thank you for your contribution to the richness of the discussion. Now, I would like to extend an invitation to share the screen with Professor Alexandre de Castro Coura, a respected full law professor at the Faculty of Law, Vitória, Brazil. Please, Professor, feel free to proceed now.
Thank you all for being here today. I am Alexandre Coura, and I'll be delivering a presentation on human rights and their challenges in Brazil, especially regarding the rights of women. Brazil as a country has made significant progress in the field of human rights, but challenges still remain. Before I speak about the rights of women, I will give an overview of the constitutional rights in Brazil. And regarding freedom of expression, the Brazilian Constitution guarantees freedom of expression and freedom of the press. However, there have been concerns regarding the safety of the journalists and the regulation of online content. Efforts are being made to protect and uphold these rights, with increased attention on safeguarding freedom of speech and ensuring a vibrant and independent media. About racial equality, Brazil is a diverse nation with a rich multicultural heritage. Despite progresses, racial inequality persists in various forms. Initiatives are underway to promote racial equality, combat discrimination, and ensure equal opportunities for all, irrespective of race, color, or ethnic background. About those initiatives, I would like to underline intellectual movement of Black writers and professors that are exposing all racial discrimination that still remains in Brazil. Among those writers, there are professors like Djamila Ribeiro and Adilson Moreira that are doing a great work in this field. Regarding indigenous rights, Brazil is home to a significant number of indigenous communities. Protecting their rights, lands, and cultural heritage remains a priority. Measures are being taken to ensure the recognition and demarcation of indigenous territories, access to healthcare and education, and preservation of their unique traditions and ways of life. About social and economic rights, Brazil is committed to reducing social inequalities and promoting economic development. Various social programs have been implemented to alleviate poverty, improve access to education and healthcare, and address housing and food security. Efforts are targeted towards ensuring the fulfillment of basic economic and social rights for all citizens. Finally, let's talk about women's rights in Brazil. Brazil, like many countries, has made progress in recognizing and protecting the rights of women, but challenges persist. About violence against women, despite all legal protection, gender-based violence remains in Brazil. Efforts are underway to combat domestic violence, feminicide, and sexual assault, including the establishment of specialized services for victims, awareness campaigns, and the strengthening of legislation to provide better protection. About political participation, Brazil has made significant strides in promoting women's political participation. The quota system requires political parties to allocate a certain percentage of seats to women in elections. This measure aimed to increase female representation and decision-making power. While progress has been made, there is still work to be done to achieve gender balance in politics. About labor rights, Brazil has regulations in place to protect women in the workplace, including equal pay and maternity leave. However, gender disparities persist in terms of employment opportunities, career advancement, and remuneration. Efforts are ongoing to promote gender equality in the labor market and close these gaps. About reproductive rights, access to comprehensive reproductive health care and reproductive rights continue to be topics of debate in Brazil. Women's rights to make choices about their bodies, access to contraception, and safe and legal abortion are issues being discussed and advocated for by women's rights organizations. The intersectionality issue. It is important to acknowledge that intersectionality of women's rights in Brazil. Marginalized groups such as Afro-Brazilian women, indigenous women, and LGBTQ plus women face compounded challenges. Focusing on their specific needs and experience is crucial to ensure equality and inclusivity for all women. Efforts by the government, civil society organizations, and women's rights movements are being made to address these issues and advance gender equality in Brazil. However, it remains an ongoing process that requires collective action and continual advocacy. In conclusion, Brazil recognizes the importance of women's rights, and it's working towards creating an inclusive society that values and respects the rights and dignity of all women. By promoting gender equality, combating violence, ensuring political participation, and safeguarding reproductive rights, Brazil is taking steps toward a more equitable future. Thank you for your attention, and I welcome any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to express my sincere appreciation for your valuable knowledge and expertise. As we transition to our final speaker, I am delighted to introduce the remarkable Sulochana Ramiah Mohan. She holds the position of Deputy Editor at Ceylon today, serving as a visiting fellow at AIDIA in Nepal, representing Sri Lanka. Sulochana, you have the opportunity to take the floor now.
Hi, thank you very much, Sarah and the others who spoke here. It was very enlightening, actually. I was learning a lot here. Then let's talk about Sri Lanka. I just wanted to tell you, it's 75 years of human rights, and there's a struggle still going on, even though it was declared 75 years ago that it has to be addressed. And let me talk about Sri Lanka's current contemporary politics and the welfare of the people of this little island, which has about 21 million people. But to start with, I would say Sri Lanka is one of the oldest democracies in the world, South Asia. And we had the first woman prime minister in the world way back in 1960, and she was the leader and the prime minister of this country for 5 years. It was a remarkable achievement at a time when women all over the world didn't have this franchise to even vote. It was during that time that it gave a very good picture how Sri Lanka has been a vibrant society by electing a prime minister, even at a stage where her husband was killed. There would have been many people who could take up the leadership, but it was given to her seeing her potential. But today, let me talk about it. It's out of 225 parliamentarians, we got only 12 women. That's almost 5% of women in the parliament. Out of which you don't see not one Muslim or Tamil minority woman member of parliament today. So you can see the plight of the women who have no representation for the minorities in the parliament. They have come to that status quo now, and which is very sad. And it has become a norm that you don't have to have a member of parliament of a woman. It's considered not a very important thing. That's what you can think of. So a little about Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka gained independence in 1948, and it's from that time onwards it was issues related to minorities and numerous challenges and discrimination and marginalization, all what you could think of, the negativity took place from that point. Basically, the concept of divide and rule, initially introduced by the British, persists in contemporary politics as well as contemporary Sri Lanka. The concept is so much so tight knit, okay, and it's a strategy went well with racial and religious divisions. A tactic seen not only in Sri Lanka but also in various parts of the world. I mean, you know that racial racism and religious using religion as a tool has become a forefront tool that is being used in South Asia. I mean, is very alarming. In Sri Lanka, there exist minority communities whose historical background differs, yet they collectively face challenges stemming from social perception and derogatory remarks both on political stages as well as on among the common people. Mainly the minorities of Sri Lanka of three groups, you can say. One of those from the hill country who arrived just 200 years ago, exactly in 1893, and today is 2023, 200 years, as tea plantation laborers from South India. Often they were referred as Kallatod. We call them because they came on boats to Sri Lanka illegally. They were brought in. They don't have a passport. They just came to work. So this derogatory remark called Kallatoni is even used now in the parliament, and some members in the society use this addressing when there is some sort of what do you call a protest taking place, and these minority groups talk about their rights. This word is usually used, harking back to their arrival on boat and illegal influx. Unfortunately, this term is still used, and similarly, the Tamils from the north and east, with roots of old as this country, that's what they say. This derogatory remarks such as Kutia is a tiger, that comes from the word the rebel tiger group. So even now, this term tiger is being used on Tamil minority politicians in the parliament by the majority politicians. They call across and talk about the rights of the minority. Hey, you Kutia, you are a tiger. You are supporting the tigers. You are sympathizing with the tigers. This is what they refer to these people. And this label persists even today. Employees, even with parliament, in debates, in schools, sometimes we hear these things have been told, okay, every other day, like, and then they use the word Tamils or the derogatory term Demalaya. This is also used. It has become very common. You would say these things when you see somebody on the road. So this minority concept actually should be demolished. There is no minority in your country because you are a Sri Lankan, even if you are a Brazilian, you are a Brazilian. You don't have to have this matter. But it has become very important because to address your own rights, your own problems, then it has to be this identity for minority, which is actually very sad. Because the moment you don't, you are not recognized. And who are you? So then you have to use this term. And so the other trend is about the Muslims. Is another minority. They also have these remarks. When they talk about rights in the parliament, they talk about rights in protest, they talk about their community suppression and all that. They are addressed to leave the country. You go to Arab country. You belong there. Muslims, they are from the Arab country. So you get out to Arab country. You don't tell anything there. So these minority groups have these terms being used often. And this trend of degradation stems from the mindset, mainly within the majority, often surfacing when they feel insecure. This is what happens when you are insecure and you are somebody is trying to overpower you or trying to talk about justice. Then these words are used to overpower. Such disparaging language perpetuated through social biases and historical context continues to marginalize and undermine the dignity of these minority groups. The manipulation of this division often arises from feeling of insecurity and positive dominance over similar communities. This exploitation provides avenues for gaining power, accumulating wealth, access easier pathway to the politics to enter the parliament. You use these terms and that makes you very popular in Sri Lanka the moment you use these words. So what I would have to say is During the wartime, the war was going for 30 years. Minority Tamil origins fled the country by boats. They went to nearby South India, they went for other countries, and this is going on. Even now, we have some sort of a lot of minority groups now emerging. Today, there are racial and ethnic minorities, and we have this economic minorities. Again, it talks about the poverty stricken low level people of this country who could be even from the majority, but they don't flee because they can't flee the way the Tamils and the Muslims don't flee either on boats, rarely. But economic minorities are the unemployed minorities are there who are trying to leave the country. And there is this linguistic minorities who don't have access to language of getting your forms, getting of your work done. You don't have the chance to use your own language. You cannot move forward or you get stuck halfway to unable to get your work done. So there are these kind of minorities. There is also unequal application of law. Laws are there. The laws are common to everyone, they say. But it comes to the minority, it looks it's very different. There you see the justice system doesn't work the way it works for the people who are from the majority. So you see things that happen far away, remote areas, things dominating areas. There are places where the families are the way the actions taken against them are too harsh. But the same thing doesn't happen in the cities. It's treated differently. For a minor theft, they have been tortured, they have been arrested, kept to meal, some die in the custody. These are happening mostly in the places where there is. No. Then we also talk about the structural and systemic issues. Deep-rooted structural issues are there. That also promotes inequality. These structures might not adequately address the specific needs or challenges faced by minority communities, leading to unequal treatment. Then there is also the social and cultural biases. I mean, for the recent past, there is this commemorating the death has become an issue. Who should commemorate the death? Families should commemorate the death or not to commemorate the combatants or the war combatants. When they are saying it's also human, they were not born as war combatants. So, but if they die, they are the children of someone. So let them commemorate. But there seems to be some sort of a line where it is not accepted, saying that rebels should not be commemorated. So these are the very confusing sort of cultural biases we see because death and birth are always celebrated by all. So how do you draw a line, say that this person should not be commemorated, this death should not be commemorated? You can't do it. A mother and father will never say not to commemorate. How they do it. But also, at the same time, we see that minority communities also are unaware of many of these laws. Now, last week there was this commemoration happening on the death of the combatants. One guy was wearing T-shirt with the emblem of the rebel group. He may have not known what sort of an impact it would have, but he is today arrested under Prevention of Terrorism Act. It's a harsh law that governs people for terrorism stuff. But I'm sure he wouldn't have meant what the impact it will have wearing a T-shirt. So this is because they are vulnerable people. They won't know what they are doing. They will have just use T-shirt. For them, it's just a T-shirt. It's not anything that will reflect about his liking towards a rebel community, rebellion group. So we don't know. But he was arrested, and these have been talking points in this country. And then there is right to land, which is also a problem the minority communities have. Their land has been taken over during the wartime, but not returned yet. Most of the land is returned, they say, but still there are people languishing without having their own permanent land, and they have the deed and they are languishing and staying in different places, displaced here and there. So, having said that, there is a lot of human rights concerns anyway in this country, and the people are finding it approaching the, can you hear me? They are approaching the international communities, asking to help them get their rights back. So likewise, with this international communities, many things are moving forward. Today, the governments are acknowledging that they have to address this human rights. Can you hear me? International communities set their eyes on Sri Lanka, and human rights has become a talking point. And every action has to be is based on these things. Today, the country is facing a financial crisis, and then the International Monetary Fund wants to support us, bail out from our debts, but they have put conditions on human rights. They are saying that we have to address these things, minority issues. So minority issues have been a focal point, which is very good. It's good for any country, because if you don't address your own problems, then there is this another country that will come forward to talk about it. So US, Canada, UK, even India, and many activists, right activists, pushing this agenda on Sri Lanka. Today, they are asking to empower the women. They are talking about legal and political framework. They are asking to have reforms working, and they are talking about the social and cultural need to accept them, advocate a lot of challenges. Government has taken a lot of initiatives. So we are hearing these things as at least we are hearing that these matters really matters to this country, and we are I could say that we are on the right path. We have a lot to achieve, but we have achieved enough. The struggle of these 75 years has not been a waste. It has not moved away from its agenda, but it's on the right path, but taking a slow snail pace. You need to do a lot more, they say. And they keep telling us every year that you have to do more, you have to do more. And it's very interesting that the government has taken a lot of initiatives. So I would like to say we are we are in a crossroad. We are talking about land rights, we are talking about religious practices, we are talking about building unified identity, integrating the societies, perpetuation of divisions. We are removing those divisions, calling for trade and commerce to be taking over the country without discriminating the minorities, to have a lot of investment in the northeast and even in the hill country. There are very staunch advocates of minority rights who are in parliament. Of course, they are males, but anyhow, they are doing their part as well. And to add to all this is the world has not let down the people of this country. They are talking about Sri Lankans on the whole. Because what is exposed is that if you don't give the rights of the people to those people, there can be more economic disruptions. There will not be any development. There won't be any taking off towards building a process. So basically, that's what I said. We are on the we have faced enough, but we are right now sort of easing out a lot of issues related to minority communities, but lot more to be done, like the international community says. So we anticipate a lot of changes to the bottom. A lot of reforms are there to be introduced. So we hope that the country will address these matters, because minority matters are really important matters to anyone in any part of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I express my deepest gratitude to you for joining us and for sharing your expertise and experiences. Thank you so much. Thank you for being the part of this significant dialogue, for your dedication to cause the human rights. I express my gratitude to all the speakers and our global audience and everyone who contributed in this success of the webinar. Your insights and dedication inspire us to continue journey towards promoting human rights and fostering inclusivity. Let's dedicate our declarations to action for just a more equitable world. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care until our next interaction. Take care. Thank you for joining all.